Okay, so now we come to chapter 27, and it's called Rasa Vichar, Sattvika Bhav, Vyabhachari Bhav, and Ratyabhas. This is on page 583. So, as I was saying yesterday, approaching this realm of Rasa Tattva is likened to coming out of the 9th canto into the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. In the 9th canto, there's very little descriptions of Krishna's madhurya. Actually, there's none. There's no descriptions of Krishna's speciality and sweetness is there. It's all Aishwarya focused. And this is there for a purpose, because it creates a very solid platform, so that when we come to the more intimate descriptions, where we've got a good base, we're not going to become familiar with Krishna in the 10th canto. That's called Sahajiyism, is what we call it today. And we meet people who haven't really studied the Tattva Siddhanta of the first 9 cantos, for example. And then they come into the Madhurya. They just want to hear about the intimate leelas of Radha and Krishna because they're so pleasing to the ear, of the materialist also. But it's not going to give you the focus and direction of actually how to connect in our eternal seva with the Supreme. It won't help like that. We have to have the Sambandha. So the Sambandha for us in this Jaiva Dhamma has been specifically the first 12 chapters, and more explicitly with the Abhidheya of the Dasmula. We've gone through all of these. So I've been through with some groups into these Rasa Tattva sections, and with live audiences, and we've realized when we've reached about the 28th or 29th chapter that we have to backtrack. We have to suddenly go back to the 25th chapter just to check there. Then we have to go back to the 14th chapter and check what is Shakti Tattva. We have to go back and check what is Bhav Bhakti. So we have to go back like that. So don't be disappointed if you feel you want to go back and check over more deeply the previous tattvas and siddhantas that we've already discussed and studied. But as I was saying yesterday, these Rasa Tattva sections have nothing to do with us personally, in a sense of my own realization of myself, this material identity. That is contained within the first 25 chapters. That is about Sambandha Gyan, my relationship with Krishna, or who is Krishna rather. In these chapters now, we're going into a whole nother area where it's only exclusively going to be focusing on the beauty and speciality of Krishna. Yesterday we discussed the 4 Nayaks of Krishna, Dhirodata, Dhirolalit, Dhiroshantaha, and Dhirodata. These 4. This is all about Krishna, 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 not about me. I'm not in the picture. So if you're looking for that liberated condition through the Rasa Tattva section, you'll probably get very bored after a little while, because it's just, there's no place for it. It's all about Krishna. It's all, today we're going to be talking about the Vyabhachari Bhavs, a long list of 33 Vyabhachari Bhavs. Something has to be ignited in the heart to really want this Madhurya conception to manifest, to appreciate the nature of these emotions. These emotions are all fully transcendentally focused, yet they sound like they have something to do with the material emotions that we experience. Disparagement, humility, various, we'll come to it. But it's nothing to do with this material world. It's to do with the spiritual reality, which for most of us, I can say certainly for myself, I haven't understood or achieved yet. So what I would recommend is that we just try simply to be patient, number one, and just try to appreciate these truths. Don't try to understand them, because you won't understand them. Unless you're fully spiritually realized, you won't understand them. But you can appreciate them now, today. And next year, you can appreciate them more deeply. And the year after that, you can appreciate them again more deeply. They will be constantly going deeper and deeper and deeper. But it's the mood of appreciation. Don't break your head and brain to try and logically The brain and rationality and intelligence, our material intelligence, doesn't have anything to do with what we're about to embark on. It's not even there. It's beyond that. So for someone who's very smart and intelligent, it'll be like something of, they'll have to just push that aside for a while. It's beyond words. It's very exciting. Actually, for the devotee who's been studying Atma Tattva for many, many, many years, I'm not the body, I'm the spirit, soul, etc. This is a whole new horizon completely. It's a whole new place where we can actually apply our consciousnesses to, and we can develop something complete. And it has nothing to do with competition or anything of that nature. It's not going to, you can't say, oh, I've got more bhav than you. You understand? It's not like that. I've got more love for Krishna than you. That's absurd. We have our sthai bhav, that original attraction for the Lord. And each person, we've said many times, it's totally and utterly unique. There's no two people in existence that have exactly the same sthai bhav, that have the exact same reciprocation and relationship with Krishna. There's no two in existence. Everyone has a totally unique vaishishtya, speciality with the Lord. That's why the Lord wants to taste that himself. He wants us to open that relationship with him. Understand? These are all subjects for contemplation and meditation. Okay, we'll carry on. Please ask me any questions as we go through. Today we have an intelligent audience here, so I'm going to be very happy to be interrupted with any pertinent questions, because you might reflect what other people are thinking. Just looking into the camera screen, I don't get the feedback that way. I just go on, but I appreciate to hear someone's hesitation or doubt, whatever. And it gives me an opportunity to explain whatever I've understood so far more clearly. So chapter 27, Rasa Vichar, Sattvika Bhav, Vyabhachari Bhav, and Ratyabhas. The next day, when Vijay Kumar and Brajanath had honored Prasad, they again went to Sri Radhakant Mat, arriving just after midday. Sri Gopal Guru Goswami had also honored Mahaprasad and was waiting for them. Sri Daina Chandra Goswami was sitting by his side, writing Upasana Parihati, the procedures for worship. At that time, Sri Guru Goswami's appearance was most remarkable. He was attired in the dress of a sannyasi. His forehead was marked with Urdhva Pundra Tilak. That just means tilak, the tilak markings. The syllables of Harinam were written on each of his limbs, and 4 thick strands of tulsi adorned his neck. He held a japa mala in his hand, and at intervals streams of tears flowed onto his chest from his eyes, which were half closed in meditation. Weeping and sighing, he sometimes called out loudly, "Ha Gauranga, Ha Nityananda." His body was somewhat plump, and his complexion was dark and effulgent. His coconut shell cup, full of water, was standing close to the seat of banana tree bark on which he was sitting, while his 2 wooden sandals lay at a distance. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is giving us a very beautiful photograph of the circumstances, the situation, the mood. This creates a mood, we can say, like a bhav, by witnessing this.
Why 4 strands? It says 4 strands.
We have 3 on our neck, and then there's 3 more. This is considered like 1 strand, and then there's 3 more. So I don't know the intricacies of the exactly why. It's because we only have 1 strand. Or we have 3, but we don't wear them. But if you see any picture of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he himself is often wearing 3 or 4 strands, but not on that picture, but on other pictures. So I think that's just an individual choice of the particular guru. We would have to ask Guru Gopal Goswami why he's wearing 4 strands.
I do that.
Yes, you can. Okay. When Vijay and Brajanath saw all this, unprecedented Shraddha arose in their hearts, because they're seeing directly, no deficiency. Everything is perfect the way this personality sannyasi, he has no material objects around him practically, except his coconut water cup, and everything is with simplicity. And the emotions himself of his being are overflowing through his eyes, demonstrating his attraction and affection for his meditation. When the heart gets full, it overflows with tears. It's like this is considered a transcendental madman. But we see, in contrast, a material madman has no tears because there's nothing in his heart. It's like empty, it's tragic. If someone is actually lost their intelligence, they can't cry, basically. They have no more emotion left. Whereas in contrast to the spiritual practitioner, his emotion is so completely full at every moment. It's just welling out of his eyes. Just like Raghunath Das Babaji, we heard in the previous chapters, was weeping and weeping. When Vijay and Brajanath saw all this, unprecedented Shraddha arose in their hearts. They both offered their sastang pranam and remained lying on the ground for a long time. The residents of the Math generally respected Vijay and Brajanath, having seen their Vaishnava qualities and their scholarship and profound understanding of many Shastras, and also knowing them to be residents of Sri Navadvip Dham. Today, however, all were especially struck with wonder on seeing such ideal Vaishnava sentiments. When Guru Goswami saw them lying down and offering pranam in this way, he lifted them up, embraced them lovingly, and made them sit down close to him. These are all very loving, deep expressions. Rajanath waited for an appropriate moment and then gradually and politely raised the subject of rasa. Sri Goswami began to speak, his heart filled with prema. Today I will make you understand the subject of anubhav and so on, and cause you to enter into rasa tattva. There are 4 ingredients of rasa: vibhav, anubhav, sattvika, and vyabhachari. Yesterday I explained vibhav tattva, and today I shall explain anubhav. Listen carefully. So, to follow this closely, as I recommended yesterday or on Saturday, we can look in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Bindu. This is the 2nd edition, and this is the 1st edition. And we can follow exactly, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is following page by page exactly through this. So we can see the diagrams and so on. It's got the various anubhavs that we're going to go through today. They're all listed very simply for our deeper appreciation. So we need that if our study is to be careful, to be perfect. Vibhav refers to the personalities who are the cause of rati arising. So we describe what is the alamban in Vibhav, and who is the ashraya, and who is the vishaya, these 2 aspects of alamban. And we also described the udipan. That was the last thing we described, Krishna's flute. And there was great details about his 3 flutes, his vamsi, his murli, and his venu. And the whole description. So this was there in great detail for the devotees to relish and taste. Now, anubhav refers to those visible symptoms that cause rati to become evident, and by which the bhavs in the heart are realized. In other words, anubhav consists of activities such as sidelong glances and hairs of the body standing on end, which are manifest as external bodily transformations, but which actually reveal the bhavs of the heart. We were just describing earlier on today of the barbs of Prahlad Maharaj. His hairs are standing on end, tears are coming from his eyes. These are anubhavs that he's experiencing his attraction to Krishna. And there's many places in the Bhagavatam where these anubhavs are described, but they're not gone into detail about them. They're just mentioned. But here we're going to go into detail about them. In other words, anubhav consists of activities, let's read that, standing on end, which are manifest as external bodily transformations, but which actually reveal the bhavs of the heart. These internal bhavs are revealed by the following outward expressions of agitation: dancing, nritya, rolling on the round, vihulanta, vihulantana, singing, gita, crying out loudly, krosana, stretching the body and writhing, tanumotana, roaring, hunkara, yawning, drimban, sighing and breathing deeply, dirga swasa, indifference to public opinion, lokana pekshita, salivary, lala shrava, laughing loudly, atahas, dizziness, guruna, and hiccuping, hiccup. So these are all the anubhavs, and it's going to be described in more detail. Brajanath, how can these external transformations nourish the tasting of rasa of the internal staibhav? Brilliant question. I also have another question. At the time of tasting rasa internally, these anubhavs are manifested externally in the body. So how can they be separate and distinct ingredients of rasa? You understand the question? It's fascinating. These are external manifestations, so how can they be reflecting the internal condition of the consciousness? Goswami, Baba, you are indeed a real pundit of Nyaya Shastra. To this very day, no one has posed such subtle questions as you have. When I used to study Rasa Shastra in the company of Sri Pandit Goswami, that means Bakrishra Pandit, exactly the same arguments would arise in my mind. However, my doubts were quickly dispelled by Sri Gurudev's mercy. The confidential significance is that in the pure consciousness, Shuddha-sattva of the jiva, when Vibhav stimulates the function of consciousness, chitta, because it's the cause, Vibhav is the cause of rati. That's how it's described. Vibhav is the cause. What is causing this rati? Stimulates the function of consciousness, chitta. Chitta is that deepest place of consciousness. It's like the fountainhead of all thought is coming from the chitta, and assists the function itself. At that time, a natural wonderment, vaichitya, arises, which makes the heart blossom in various ways, and this in turn causes some outward transformations to become evident in the body. I'm just astonished with the brilliance of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings. When the heart blossoms, so this is beyond words to contemplate this, to think about this. When the heart is blossoming, then these experiences will take place. It's not something that you can force by your austerities or sadhana. This is why this rasa tattva was never really opened out before Mahaprabhu came. Prior to Mahaprabhu, most of the sadhaks, they would perform rigorous austerities. If you read back in Satya Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga, etc., they were all performing austerities to actually achieve moksha, or at very, very best, Vaikuntha. So this is all being given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and this whole door has been opened. All these rasa tattva explanations, by the way, are all enumerated by Rupa Goswami. It's Rupa Goswami who has written the whole, which actually comes from the Hindi psychology. If you look at Hindi psychology, it uses the same terminologies. They're all there. So he's taken that and he's added Sanskrit clarifications of different states of consciousness. because this is what it's about. It's about states of consciousness. This is what Rasa Tattva is. If we understand this, it gives us a baseline for when we actually hear the Leelas. When we hear the Leelas and pastimes, they make so much more sense to us if we've got this foundation of the platform. There's something steady there. This is the objective. Vaichitya arises, which makes the heart blossom in various ways, and this in turn causes some outward transformations to become evident in the body. These external transformations, such as dancing, are called Udbashvara, and there are many types. When the heart dances, the body also begins to dance, and when the heart sings, the tongue also sings. You should understand the action of other transformations in the same way. However, the action of Udbashvaras is not the original action. Rather, the anubhavs that arose to nourish the vibhavs then spread throughout the body in the form of Udbashvaras. So these Udbashvaras are described very clearly in this Bindu. There's a whole description about these Udbashvara. We hear many times in the Leelas how the gopis, when they hear the sound of Krishna's flute, or in the presence of Krishna directly, that their skirts begin to loosen. And this is a symptom of these Udbashvaras arising. So there's a definite science behind it all, that the acharyas are able to explain it. How does this manifest? The original manifestation is caused, of course, one extreme emotional attraction. This is the ultimate, and it's touching on the very essential, what do you call, pran, our very essential nature is responding to that emotion. And this is how it responds in these different ways. We have to just patiently hear. Don't try and understand it though. If you try to understand it, it'll crack.
The skirts of the gopis loosen themselves because there's nothing like non-alive in the spiritual world, because everything's alive.
It's a symptom. It's called Udbashvaras, and this is one of the Udbashvaras symptoms. It exhibits itself in this way, these Udbashvara. You can read about it in the Bindu. It'll explain very clearly what are these.
These other ones are happening to the body, right?
To the what?
The Bashvaras are happening to the body. And this is
To the body, yes.
This is talking about the skirt. So then somebody could ask, how could it happen to an inanimate object? But in the
No, well,
spiritual
their waists are shrinking, and that gives the impression that the skirts are slipping. It's not that the skirts are expanding.
Okay.
No. It's the waist is shrinking with the emotion. This is the very, like the electric current of our body that is being touched by these emotions, which produce such, especially when we come to the sattvic bhavs. These are, the anubhavs actually have some mental cognition behind them. When you're dancing or you're singing or something like that, there's some cognitive faculty is acting. But when the sattvic bhavs manifest, there's no room for any place of the mind whatsoever. They're completely beyond that. All these questions actually will be answered on the next page and the next page and the next page. It's true, I know. And certainly at the end of each chapter, if I commented before, Bhaktivinoda Thakur pulls it all together very simply. If you've come through the whole chapter and then you read the last couple of pages on every single chapter, he just summarizes the whole content previously in a much more simplified way, because we've had this experience of these explanations and we've tried to appreciate it to our best degree, but then he just explains it very beautifully. So patience is absolutely necessary. As soon as the sthaya bhav in the heart is stimulated, by the Vibhav, Anubhav, by the Vibhav, Anubhav begins its function as another action of the heart. Okay? So we understood that Vibhav is the cause and Anubhav is the function after the cause. Thus, Anubhav is a separate individual ingredient. It manifests as a consequence of the Vibhav. The Vibhav is the cause. When this is revealed through activities such as singing, it is called cooling, sita. And when it is revealed through activities such as dancing, it is called throwing, shapana. There are also many other symptoms of Anubhav, such as swelling of the body, oozing of blood, and separation and contraction of the bone joints, which are very rarely seen. So I will not elaborate upon them. So these are seen, of course, in the body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And these have never been witnessed before, and they never will be witnessed again. Only Mahaprabhu was experiencing those extraordinary Astasattvic bhavs to that degree. Any further? The extremely astonishing Anubhavs that were seen in the body of my Praneshwara Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, such as becoming like a tortoise, are not possible in Sadhak Bhaktas. So he's not even going to go into that explanation there. After Vijay and Brajanath had heard these confidential instructions of Guru Goswami, they remained silent for some time and then asked, Prabhu, what is Sattvika Bhav? So now, when I was reading this today, I appreciated the mood of the devotees, that they are letting particular realizations sink in before they suddenly jump back with another question. There was one time when someone was always asking questions to my Gurudev. My Gurudev would finish his answer, then immediately he'd ask, and he said, you haven't even appreciated, he said, I've given you the answer with full bhav. In this answer, you should appreciate it and take it and contemplate it. And then, after a few minutes or whatever, you'll have another question. Otherwise, it's just on the intellectual platform completely. It's just on the academic level. Question after question after question after question. I have to say this specifically for Western audiences. They always got so many questions, really. And the questions, my Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said, actually are symptomatic of not really understanding the mood or the heart of the subject matter. If you keep on again and again and again, it means you haven't really listened. Because we all have the propensity to understand these matters. Otherwise, why are they being given? We all have that. And if we don't have it, our guru will supply that. It's a science. So, Prabhu, what is Sattvika Bhav? Goswami, the word Sattva refers to the chitta, pure heart or consciousness. Cheto, Dapana, Marjanam, we say. That Cheto, that's the chitta. That is stimulated by any bhav in relation to Krishna, either directly or with some obstruction. So if Krishna's there, even though there might be some obstruction to attaining Krishna, it's still in relation to Krishna. Like Kupcha, for example, that wasn't Shuddha Bhakti entirely because she wanted something for her own pleasure. But it's given the name Sadharani Rati because her focus of the object was Krishna. But there was an obstruction because her lust for enjoyment was there. So that's like an obstruction. But nevertheless, it was still a Rati. The bhavs that are born from this sattva are called sattvika bhavs. There are three types of sattvika bhavs: smooth, snigdha, smeared, digdha, and rough, ruksha. There's no room for speculation here. It's like when you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's so clear. It gives us such a confidence in its authenticity. So here, the analytical descriptions are so exact. They can't be, you can't go away, you can't go out of them and speculate. This is a great gift. If you're actually interested in this topic and want to come through and it requires patient hearing. first. And you'll find, after listening, even just for an hour or so, there will be a transformation in the consciousness. I recognize this today personally. I listened to the chapter, and at the end of listening, I just felt really elated. I didn't know why, but I just felt particularly elated just having heard the subject matter. Even I haven't understood it, I've appreciated it to some degree, but it's like a wave, and we need many waves to come through. But at least we're starting. If we're showing our greed, our enthusiasm for the subject matter, because that's what's going to carry us through to the 40th chapter. And that's the quality of Raganuga Bhakti, is the greed. If the greed maintains itself, then there will be some fruit from it. But if the greed is not really very strong, if I'm doing it for other reasons or whatever, if I haven't really developed my sadhan bhajan particularly, then the greed may go down, and then I'll just walk away from it. It's a remarkable subject matter. Rajanath, what is snigdha, smooth, sattvika bhav? Goswami, snigdha, sattvika bhav has two divisions, mukhya, primary, and gonya, secondary. Mukhya snigdha, sattvika bhav occurs when mukhya rati, that is directly in relation to Krishna, overpowers the heart. So now don't try to relate it to our own experiences. Just appreciate the raga atmika bhaktas, those spiritual personalities, when Krishna overpowers their hearts. This is the best way to focus on this. Examples of mukhya, snigdha, sattvika, bhav are becoming stunned, perspiration, and so on. Gona snigdha sattvika bhav arises from an invasion of the heart by gona rati, when Krishna is at some distance or there is some obstruction. Two examples of gona sattvika bhavs are fading of the bodily color by varnya and faltering of the voice, swara bhed. Smeared digdha sattvika bhavs arise when any bhav other than the function of mukhya rati and gona rati overwhelms the heart. Trembling is an example of digdha, smeared, sattvika bhavs that follow on from rati. Sometimes when someone who only appears to be a bhakta hears about the extremely wonderful and sweet bhavs of Krishna, he becomes astonished and experiences elation, although he actually has no rati. This is the third type of sattvika bhav, which is known as rough, ruksha. An example of ruksha sattvika bhav is seen when the hairs of the body stand on end, romancha. So I'm going to stop here. We've just begun the explanation on sattvika bhavs, which is extraordinary, but it goes on. And we've reached our time. So patiently hear these explanations, and also very soon we'll come to the 33 Vyavachari bhavs. So I'm just saying again and again, patience, and if we have enthusiasm for these topics, we will be well rewarded, really. And that enthusiasm will come from our sadhan bhajan, from our chanting, from our hearing, from our something deep within our nature will become touched by these topics, because we all have the propensity to realize these topics. It's all there in potential. What's that? Nitya siddhyasya bhavasya prakritamriti sadyate. It's all there in potential. So don't consider for a single moment that I'm not eligible for this. If you want this, that's the what do you call? That's the ingredient for the adhikar. You just simply have to want it. Greed is the main quality on this path. transcendental greed. And to actually acquire that transcendental greed, we need to be in the company of other devotees who have that greed. I know myself, when I'm reading through these topics, when I've actually finished reading after a month or two, if I'm not actually able to converse with another devotee about these topics, my enthusiasm actually goes down somewhat. I actually have to find someone who's interested in these topics, and there's not too many of them that are, because it requires application. And it's nothing to do with me, as I said in the beginning. It's a separate sort of focus. It's only on Krishna. So it's so incredibly purifying. So purifying. It's the most purifying, actually, to hear this. But we'll continue tomorrow. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Jai Vedanta ki jai. And please hold on to your Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Bindu every time. And to have further understanding, read that for clarification. It's all in note form and diagrams, etc. It's very simple. Now studying this Bhakti Ras. And it's a description of divine emotional attractions to the Vishaya, to Krishna. The first thing we discussed was Vibhav. Vibhav is in two sections. There's Alamban, and the Alamban is the Ashraya and the Vishaya. So we have to be very clear on who is the enjoyer and who is the Ashraya. And we've remarked, it's been said, that sometimes Krishna, it sometimes changes, yes. Sometimes Krishna becomes the Ashraya. He wants to please his servants. So that is there to consider and appreciate.
He is changed with Radharani.
Yes, with Radharani. With Radharani, he becomes like the Ashraya. Yes, yes, correct. So, but what I'm saying is this overview of the contrast between material attraction and loving affairs in this material world, which sound so similar to the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, a young boy and a young girl. We hear about it, we think about it, all songs about it in this material world all the time. But we have to see the categorical distinction between the two. In the material sense, it's only one pointed of selfish gain for the individual. Even the highest conception of love in this material world is a mother for her child. This is considered by many philosophers and so on as being the highest conception of love and attachment. But that mother has attachment for the child because it's her child. It's not that she's loving all children in the street, getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning to feed the child. She's not getting up for other people. It's her own child. So there's that abhiman of self rather than the abhiman of simply servant of the lover. So Krishna is the servant of the gopis. The gopis are dedicated sevaks of Krishna. This is the dynamic. Therefore, as I said previously, it's without any selfish motive. I said at the very beginning of our study here that we park our false egos and our personal ambitions and desires before we walk into the kingdom of this Bhakti Ras exploration. And it comes with a whole nother language, which is so beautiful and rich, and just takes a little while to become familiar with. And then it has to have the specific vocabulary to describe these new emotions that we've never even appreciated. Like yesterday, I want to read now a little bit from this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Bindu of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that I'm encouraging you all to look at. Yesterday, we discussed the Anubhavs. The Anubhavs. So here it's very clear: dancing, rolling on the ground, loud crying, writhing of the body. All the 11, 12, sometimes it's described as 13 Anubhavs are described. And then we became describing the Sattvika bhavs. And the last thing we were talking about were the divisions of these bhavs: Snigdha, Digdha, and the Ruksha. This is what we discussed yesterday. So I just want to reiterate the last thing we talked about yesterday on page 586, halfway down, Goswami is discussing Snigdha Sattvika Bhav has two divisions. Now it's described in a very nice diagram here. Snigdha, smooth, Sattvika Bhavs that arise either from Mukhya, primary mellows, or the 7 secondary mellows. And it's described just underneath here, for our clarity, Snigdha Sattvika Bhavs are manifest only in the eternally perfected devotees. They're only manifested in the parikas directly of Krishna. And they're called Snigdha. So we're honoring this. We're not trying to imagine that, oh yes, one day I will experience this. Unless I become from sadhana siddha to, well, I will always be like sadhana siddha. That's where I'm coming from. So, Snigdha Sattvika Bhavs are manifest only in the eternally perfected devotees. Sattvika Bhavs that arise in Jata Rati Bhaktas, those in whom Rati has made an appearance. Because the last thing we read yesterday, and I was asked a question afterwards, after we closed the live stream, about this, because it seemed to be a little bit bewildering. If you look at the last sentence on page 586, at the bottom of the page, it says, this third type of Sattvika Bhav, which is known as rough. And just before that it says, although he actually has no rati. So the question was about the absence of rati, but still demonstrating some type of anubhav. Like sometimes you might experience goosebumps. Your hairs might stand on end, but it might have nothing to do with Krishna. You might see something astonishing in the sky, or even in some relationship. Something astonishing might take place, and the hairs can rise, or goosebumps can come. But the rati, the focus, isn't on Krishna. So this is not considered from Snigdha. So we've come through here. The Jati Rati Bhaktas, those in whom Rati has made it, are called Digdha Sattvika Bhavs. So this is the second type, the Jati Rati Bhaktas. We discussed this in our Shikshastikam study of this Jati Rati Bhaktas. When these symptoms are seen in persons in whom Rati has not been aroused, they are called Ruksha Sattvika Bhavs. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur just makes it very clear here. In actuality, Sattvika Bhavs can occur only in persons in whom Rati has been aroused. Rati and Bhav are the same. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that 3 times in the previous chapter. He considers Bhav and Rati to be identical, so they're synonymous. Whom Rati has been aroused. When symptoms resembling Sattvika Bhavs are manifest in persons who are devoid of Rati, they are known as Sattvika Abhas, a semblance of Sattvika Bhav. Therefore, Ruksha Sattvika Bhavs are also said to be an Abhas. So this can be vaguely in relationship to Krishna or not in relationship to Krishna at all. But I think that explanation, which was my purpose in reading it, was to clarify this previous paragraph that we've just read on page 586. And I hope that is more clear for everybody hearing and reading that part. So now we'll continue on the top of page 587. Yes, an example of Ruksha Sattvika Bhav is seen when the hairs of the body stand on end, romancha. But this romancha that we sing about every single day in the second verse of Guru Vastakam, what's that? Chaitanya, what's that second verse? Romancha Kampa Shuta Ranga Bhajo. It's singing about these, was singing about these 3 anubhavs. Actually, these are Sattvika Bhavs. This romancha is a Sattvika Bhav. We see on the previous page here, these 8 on the opposite page to what I've just been reading, which is on page 182 in the Bindu. At the bottom, it's got the Contact with air and romancha, horripilation, is mild. Kampa is trembling, moderate. And swabade, faltering of the voice, intense. So these are sattvika bhavs. So we're becoming at least familiar with the terminologies. And wherever our adhikar allows and the mercy comes from Guru to understand more deeply these topics, that will come by itself. Brajanath, how does sattvika bhav arise? Goswami, when the heart chitta of the sadhak becomes saturated with sattva bhav, pure emotion related to Krishna, it submits itself to the life air, pran. Then, when the pran has been excited, it is transformed and causes the appearance of profuse agitation in the body. At that time, the bodily transformations such as stamba, becoming stunned, occur. So we see when Radha and Krishna meet, many times Radharani will be experiencing all kinds of powerful emotions internally when she's just meeting Krishna. And Krishna is witnessing. He's seeing all these bhavs expressed on her body, and he's looking at them in wonderment because they can't be hidden. They actually manifest externally, especially the anubhavs and even the sattvika bhavs, this being stunned. Radharani becomes stunned. There's this bhav called kila kinchana. When 7 bhavs strike Radhika's heart simultaneously, jubilation, anger, fear, what's the other? Intense greed, weeping. These bhavs are all coming simultaneously, 7 of them. And Krishna is just astonished at the movement of Radharani's heart that he's witnessing directly. This is when we hear about these bhavs. So to read them here in our study is very, very helpful, how they're manifesting. At that time, the bodily transformations, such as stamba, become stunned, occur. So this is when the life air pran submits itself to the emotion that causes this profuse agitation in the body. Brajanath, how many types of sattvika transformations are there? Goswami, there are 8 sattvika transformations, namely becoming stunned, stamba, perspiration, sveda, horripilation, romancha, faltering of the voice, swabade, trembling, viputa, I have to get this back again. Vipatu, transformations of the bodily color, vaivarnya, such as dirtiness and thinness, which occur due to emotions such as despair, fear and anger, shedding tears, ashru, and devastation, pralaya. Actually, these haven't been placed in the order, which is simpler to remember. We have earth, water, fire, sky, and air. And these are described. Actually, they are very close. But they're not in the same order that we have it on the list. In the list, you can see these 8 sattvika bhavs. And now we appreciate where they're coming from. They're coming when the pran is excited by these intense emotions. So we see in the body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because these same emotions can manifest in separation and in meeting. The dynamic between meeting and separation is so important to appreciate all the time. 12 hours of the day a meeting, 12 hours a day separation. And it's called Mohan Akhya Mahabhav, in contrast to Madan Akhya Mahabhav. So we have Madan Mohan. We have the deity, Madan Mohan, signifying the 2 types of...
highest.
The highest, yes. The Madan and the Mohan. They're both the highest. In separation, there's Mohan is the highest, and what's the other one? It's just gone from my mind. Modan and Mohan. So Modan is the lower, and then Mohan is the highest in separation. And that same bliss constitutes the same sattvika bhavs in their full blazing condition. All 8 sattvika bhavs blazing simultaneously. This is beyond imagine. This is completely achintya for the conditioned soul. But we're hearing about it. We're hearing about it to appreciate the unbelievable emotional exchange between Radha and Krishna. When we understand this a little bit, any material emotion just pales into total insignificance. It's meaningless. It doesn't have any value really at all. It's just the emotion of this material world, which we take as so important until we understand this or hear about this transcendental world of emotion. We have this beautiful verse at the end of the Rasa Panchadhiya, Anugrahaya Bhaktanam Manusyam Deha Ashritata Bhajate Tat Rishi Kritva Yashrutva Tatparo Bhavet. Krishna has manifested just to demonstrate the height of his transcendental relationships in this material world, such as the Rasa Leela pastime. That's why he's actually come, to show us the height of transcendental love, because he knows in this material world we're hungry for love, but we're misdirected and trying to get that love from the material world. It doesn't exist. I've just described the highest love is a mother for a child, and that's not completely real either. There's so much emotion there and sentiment there, but it's nothing. It pales into total insignificance when it's compared to the transcendental love between Radha and Krishna, with these extraordinary emotions manifesting in her heart and coming outside, and Krishna's reading them all. He's reading her, he's seeing how much she loves me. Because actually Radhika's love for Krishna is much higher than Krishna's love for Radhika. Krishna loves Radhika because Radhika loves Krishna so much. That's why Krishna loves Radhika. But in the initial stage of their meeting in Vidagdha Madhav, it's described, Radhika is carrying the attraction to Krishna. And we see from chapter 14 that Krishna is the energetic and Radhika surrounds the energetic with her Shakti. Completely. Radhika is only attracted to Krishna. But Krishna has many other attractions. He's called Bahushaka, like the many-branched tree. He loves his mother, he loves his father, he loves the sakas, he loves the cows, he loves Nanda Baba, he loves his uncle and aunt. So many people Krishna loves. All the conditioned jivas, he also, Paramatma is there, loving all. But the gopis, in contrast, they are Vishaka. They are one-pointed. It's only Krishna, especially Radhika. She has nothing else except Krishna. Nothing else except Krishna. So there's a difference.
Miss Mohan, Radharani can have only this one Mohan.
She experiences that. He's asking a question. This Madan Mohan is experienced by Radharani. No.
But Manjari, who
If they're with Radharani, the Manjaris will taste that.
taste
Yes, they will get the reflection of that.
A little bit extent, not so like Radharani. Some extent.
It's very hard to say exactly. I mean,
It's a lot,
it depends on the circumstances. Sometimes if Rupa Manjari is there massaging Sri Radhika's lotus feet while Krishna is in the Kunj with Radhika, and Tulsi Manjari is massaging the other lotus feet, they are going to be experiencing so much of the same mood, that Mohanakya Mahabhav. It'll be so much the same that they will be experiencing. But this isn't really the point. The point is the service. Because if we get caught up in what do they do, how much bliss do they have, this bliss and this, it gets into sort of like almost a competitive state. it's about love. How much, you can't gauge the power of love in a sense. You can't categorize it into, we are categorizing it for our help into entering into the transcendental realm. But in the transcendental realm, it's not a consideration. It's just a total immersion in their attraction to Radha and Krishna's love that they're serving. Because they see the love between Radha and Krishna is higher than theirs. And of course we have the main example when Radharani leaves the Ras Leela, Krishna follows her, pacifies her, and then all the gopis become mad in separation. And they're thinking their separation mood is so extraordinary. They become demented. It's described like mad women, searching up, and then they find Radhika separated from Krishna. Krishna has left Radhika. And then they see the height of Radhika's separation mood then. And then they're all dwarfed by the immensity of her love for Krishna. Chandravali, Saiba, Padma, all the other, Shamali, all the other gopis, they're all acknowledging the greatness of Radhika's love for Krishna. So superior. So Krishna wanted to establish this greatness in the Ras Leela. Their respect for Radhika, primarily, because they had forgotten that. They were all thinking they were the most purified, or the most fortunate, Saubhagya. But when they put Radhika in the center, and for us, when we put Radha and Krishna in the center of loving pastimes and take away our conception materially of that, then something will begin to transpire in the heart. But that can only happen with practice, sincere sadhana, sincere study of scripture, sincere chanting, mercy from Nam, mercy from Guru, mercy from Vaishnavas, mercy from the Dham, mercy from the holy rivers, mercy on following brats like Ekadashi today. This Ekadashi brat today can give us mercy. So there are 8 Sattvika bhavs, and these have all been listed. And on that page of 182 in the new edition of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. I think most people have the new edition rather than the old edition, so I'm just going with referencing the newer edition. Under some circumstances, the life air pran remains as the 5th element, air, along with the other 4 elements, earth, water, fire, and sky. So there's 5 principal elements.
Prana touch with elements.
Huh?
With prana touch with elements.
No, the pran is like one of the elements, but it's the 5th element. It's the principle.
Touch, like mixed.
It comes in contact,
Like
yes,
Okay.
with the other elements of this world. Along with it. However, sometimes when it predominates, when the pran predominates, that is, when it situates itself in the air, Vayu element, it travels throughout the body of the jiva. When pran comes in contact with the earth element, inertness, stamba, occurs. When it takes shelter of the water element, tears, ashru, appear. When it is situated in the fire element, change in bodily color, vaivarnya, and perspiration, sveda, are evident. When pran takes shelter of the sky element, loss of consciousness or devastation, pralaya, occurs. And when pran is self-dominating and takes shelter of the air element, the transformed conditions of horripilation, romancha, trembling, vipatu, and faltering of the voice, swara bhed, are manifested, depending on whether the degree of strength of pran is mild, moderate, or intense, respectively. Rupa Goswami hasn't left a single space for speculation here. It's like many times philosophers, they present their philosophical conclusions and philosophical conclusions, but there's all kinds of space for argument. Rupa Goswami addresses every single factor of this. There's nothing omitted. Since these 8 transformations are active both internally and externally, so becoming stunned is an internal manifest realization of the heart, but it's coming out externally. So it's both simultaneously, internal and external. They are sometimes called bhav and sometimes anubhav. So all of these anubhav and sattvika bhavs are like that. They're manifestations from the internal heart's melting to different degrees. However, the anubhavs, such as dancing, rolling on the ground, and singing, are not considered the same as sattvika bhavs because they are only active in the outer body. So these, I'll read that again. However, the anubhavs, such as dancing, rolling on the ground, and singing, are not considered the same as sattvika bhavs because they are only active in the outer body. The anubhav activities such as dancing are not the results of bhav arising from sattva, that is sattvika bhav. Rather, the activity is instigated by the application of intelligence. So as I said previously, there's some cognitive understanding when I'm dancing. I know what I'm doing. I'm not actually completely gone, so to speak. But in the sattvika bhavs, I have no control. Like when Mahaprabhu falls down in the Sringavaha gate in front of the cows and shows the form of like a tortoise. All his limbs enter his... He's not aware of that at all. Like when he falls in the ocean and the fisherman picks him up, all his joints have become elongated. He's not aware of this at all. He's actually in the pastimes in Vrindavan with the gopis. So this is something that's happening without cognition, without any mental faculty at all. But in anubhavs, there is some mental remnant. A little bit there is there. There's some connection still. That's the big difference between anubhavs and sattvika bhavs. We should understand this clearly. Because when Radharani meets Krishna, she demonstrates many anubhavs, but then sometimes she demonstrates the sattvika bhavs, which are much more profound. And when Krishna sees these sattvika bhavs, what is his response to that? He also tastes those same sattvika bhavs himself, but the initiator is Radhika. He's seeing the power of Radhika's love. Because always Radhika should be the emphasis. This is how my Gurudev described every single day, practically, that Radhika is the queen. Krishna is like Nirvishesh Brahm without Radhika. So everything is Radhika in Rasa Vichar. In Tattva Vichar we can say Krishna, but not in Rasa Vichar. Rasa Vichar means consideration. When it's considering from the point of view of Rasa, Radhika is the supreme. Radhika is holding her stick of man. And Krishna is intimidated by that. There's some sense that Krishna has to obey Sri Radhika. When Radhika comes into that mood of Swadhina Bhartika, the highest heroine, controlling her lover, Radhika is most satisfied. So all of these descriptions are helping us understand more clearly the Leela. This is the platform for the Leela. Where were we? Rather, the activity is instigated by the application of intelligence. However, in transformations such as becoming stunned, Sattvika Bhav acts directly without relying on the intelligence. Very clear now? For this reason, Anubhav and Sattvika Bhav are considered to be separate and distinct ingredients. I hope that's very clear with everyone. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes it so simply and logically. Not that we can understand it, we can appreciate this. I keep saying this again and again. We're not trying to understand it as if I am experiencing this. It's nothing to do with me. It's those eternal Ragatmika bhaktas who are experiencing this. Rajanath, I would like to know the cause of Ashtasattvika transformation, such as stamba, becoming stunned. So this is a deep question here. Goswami, stamba is a state in which one becomes inert without speaking or having any other activity, and it is caused by jubilation, fear, astonishment, dejection, regret, anger, and weariness. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the killer Kinchitabhav that I was just mentioning. I didn't get all of them completely right, but jubilation, fear, astonishment, dejection, regret, anger, weariness. Can you imagine those 5 powerful emotions impressing the heart at the same time, not the mind, the heart at the same time. That's called kila kinchita. Anger and so on. Romancha, standing of the bodily hairs, arises from astonishment, jubilation, enthusiasm and fear. Swarabhed, faltering of the voice, occurs due to despair, wonder, anger, jubilation and fear. Vipatu, trembling, is caused by fear, anger, jubilation and so on. Vaivarnya, change in bodily color, is due to emotions such as despair, anger and fear. And these can happen all simultaneously. When this stage of modern Akhya Mohanbhav and Mohanakya Mohanbhav is when all these happen simultaneously to the highest degree. It hasn't mentioned yet, but it will further on, that there are 5 degrees of intensity within the Sattvika bhavs, and we should note them. There's Domya, which means smoking, the beginning. Then there's Jwalita, that means the flame is ignited. Then there's Dipta, Udipta and Sudipta, these 5 intensities of the Sattvika bhav. And when all those are at the highest stage of Sudipta, and they're all, that means blazing to the most intensity, and all 8 of them are manifesting simultaneously, this is Madan Akhya Mahabhav. So this is so extraordinary to appreciate in wonderment. Is due to him. Ashru, tears come from the eyes through the influence of jubilation, anger, despair, and other emotions. Tears of joy are cool, whereas tears of anger are warm. In the state of pralaya, devastation, one is bereft of activity and knowledge, and he becomes senseless and falls on the ground. This may be due to happiness or distress. I was just reading in the Rai Ramananda Samvar today, how when Mahaprabhu and Rai Ramananda, they embrace each other right at the very beginning. And it's described that when they embraced each other, ecstatic symptoms, paralysis, perspiration, tears, shivering, paleness, standing up of the bodily hairs appeared. The word Krishna came from their mouths falteringly. This is from verse 24. And in the Bengali, it's the Bengali language, it's Stamba, Sweda, Ashru, Kampa, Pulaka, Vaivarnya. So all these emotions that we're talking about now, we're going to start, once we become a little bit familiar with them, every time you read the Shastra, you're going to be aware of when they're being presented. It's like Uddhav even in the 3rd canto, when he's speaking to Vidura, he also experiences many transformations. He becomes silent, is described, for like 40 minutes in his conversation with Vidura, because he's overwhelmed by remembrance of Krishna. And all kinds of anubhavs manifest in his body at that time.
I remember one seva of Srila Guru Govinda Maharaj. He wrote a book and he explained what he saw when Srila Guru Govinda Maharaj had bhav.
Yes, yes, Lagudi. Yes.
I remember he changed body color.
Yes.
And
Prabhu is describing how in one book, Srila Guru Govinda Maharaj. Yes, I remember. Yes. When Srila Guru Govinda Maharaj was first experiencing these Sattvika bhavs, one devotee called Lagudi was writing this book, and he was explaining exactly like we're reading here. So this is how you can say, yes, this is bona fide, because this is Shastric. This is Shastric. Falls on the ground. This may be due to happiness or distress. That means Mohan or Madan. In either way, it can be extreme happiness or extreme distress. We see in the book, what's that? Bhakti Ratnakara by Narahari Chakravarti Thakur. He's writing about Srinivasacharya. Many times he's experiencing these anubhavs of despair in relationship to the different Vaishnavas who are leaving their bodies. There are 4 types of sattvika bhavs corresponding to progressive gradations of sattva, purity. These are called smoking, domayita, alight, jvalita, burning, dipta, and blazing, pradipta. So I just described these 2 moments ago, but I gave another 5 which are described by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. The names are a little bit different. So there is, some of these words can be interchanged. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is using the word pradipta for when it's blazing, but it's used sudipta by Rupa Goswami also. So these are the stages. Now, the ruksha, rough, sattvika bhavs are generally domayata, smoking. That means minimal. Whereas the snigdha, smooth sattvika bhavs gradually reach the highest stages. Rati is the cause of all astonishing ananda. Every time he says this means rati towards Krishna, not rati towards my own sentimental emotions connected with some material experience. It's rati for Krishna. This is what we've already discussed in the alamban and the vibhav, this direction towards Krishna as the object, the vishaya. Rati is the cause of all astonishing ananda, and in its absence there is no wonderment in the ruksha, sattvika bhavs, and other emotions. Yes, without this rati, then there's this wonderment, this achintya mood is not there. I'll just go through one more. Brajanath, Prabhu, sattvika bhavs arise by extreme good fortune, but many people make a show of these bhavs when they are playing a role in a drama or to accomplish their own tasks in worldly life. What may be said about the bhavs of such people? Goswami, sattvika bhavs that manifest naturally as one performs the sadhana of sincere and pure bhakti are Vaishnava bhavs. Apart from these, whatever emotional symptoms appear can be divided into 4 categories: the semblance of rati, ratyabhas; the semblance of sattvika bhavs, sattva abhas; symptoms that do not arise from sattva, nishattva, and averse or contrary symptoms, pratipta. What's that word? Pratipa. These are like condemned. So there's these 4 types that these bhavs can demonstrate themselves, but they're not actually real, these 4 types. They're not arising from rati. This is what we keep mentioning, because the vibhav was mentioned at the beginning, and now we've progressed to try to understand or try to appreciate the sattvic as well as the anubhavs. Brajanath, what is ratyabhas, the semblance of rati? Goswami, ratyabhas occurs in those who desire liberation. Very clear. If that is your intention, liberation, that means you are ultimately at the center of your practice. It's not selfless. It's about you wanting liberation and freedom. That's a very deep, deep desire in all conditioned souls until they're touched by the mercy of a Mahabhagavat, or the mercy of Nam, or in special cases in the mercy of the Dham. Unless they're touched by this special mercy, they will keep that desire for liberation. We're being pinched in this material world like anything. Adhyatmic, adibautic, adidevic, birth, death, disease, old age, with so much suffering in this material world. Who can deny? We want to become freed from this, so it's very, very deep, this desire for happiness beyond this world. That is liberation. We take shelter in sleep just for relief from the suffering of the world. Those great stalwart bhaktas, they disregard sleep. I can remember Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj, we were just mentioning, didn't like sleeping at all. He had an aversion to sleep. He preferred to stay awake as much as possible and would just lose consciousness when the body became too weary. But basically he had an aversion to sleeping. But many of us, we take shelter in, this is like shelter in the liberated state of like the Brahman practically. What is Rati Abhas, the semblance of Rati? Goswami, Rati Abhas occurs in those who desire liberation. It arises in the impersonalist sannyasis of the Sankara Sampradaya when they hear discussions about the pastimes of Krishna. They use the discussions of pastimes of Krishna to feel some impersonal bliss for themselves. This is what I've said from the very beginning. We're parking our material identity now, just for the duration of these chapters at least. And then we can run back to mummy, so to speak. We'll take shelter there of our security in our material identity. Do you understand? Rajanath, what is Sattva Bhas? Sattva Abhas, the semblance of Sattvic Abhavs. Goswami, Sattva Bhas is the semblance of joy and astonishment that arises in those whose hearts naturally give rise to loose emotions. For example, the adherents of Jaran Mimamsa and ordinary women when they hear Harikatha. Soft-hearted women, they can start weeping very easily. Sometimes they do. That's not necessarily rati. That's just a sentiment that's been tweaked or twigged in their hearts. We have to... This Jaran Mimamsa is those who are of the impersonal school, basically, and believe in the karmic laws are higher than Krishna's control over everything. They're limited in their appreciation. In the index, you can read the exact meaning of Mimamsa there. Rajanath, what is Nisattva? A semblance of bhav that does not arise from sattva. Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes into great length to describe what is not sattvika bhavs, because he knows that many practitioners might have a desire to imitate this. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was very strict on this. Goswami, Nisattva refers to symptoms such as horripilation and tears that are exhibited by people whose minds are naturally duplicit and who practice them for the sake of dramatic performance or in order to accomplish a material objective. Some people are actually hard-hearted, but they are so practiced that they can begin to weep in an instant, as if they are genuinely crying. However, their crying is completely pretentious, and they can be said to be slippery-minded. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is so kind here explaining this. Rajanath, what are adverse or contrary symptoms? Pratipa. Goswami, Pratipa Bhav Abhas is the semblance of bhav that occurs because of anger, fear, and other emotions resulting from activities that are unfavorable towards Krishna. Kamsa and Shishupal are obvious examples. You can remember this. Brajanath, Prabhu, we have understood Vibhav, Anubhav, and Sattvika Bhav, as well as the difference between Sattvika Bhav and Anubhav. Difference, one is with cognizance, that's Anubhav, and Sattvika Bhav doesn't have. Now please describe the Vyabhachari Bhavs. So I'm going to stop here, perfect place to stop, and tomorrow we will discuss the Vyabhachari Bhavs. So we're discussing sequentially from Vibhav to Anubhav to Sattvika Bhav to Vyabhachari Bhav, and then we will discuss the emperor of all bhavs, which is the Sthai Bhav. So it's going sequentially through to make it as simple as conceivably possible. So this is very ecstatic appreciation of Rasa Tattva. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Rasa Tattva ki jai, Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. So yesterday, we're coming back to our chapter 27, and it seems like success on the streaming now. We were discussing the Sattvika Bhavs, and previously we had discussed the Anubhavs, and previous to that we just discussed the Vibhav, which is described as two, the alamban, and that is divided into two, the Vishaya and the Ashraya. So the two, the exchange between what are we focusing on? And the Anubhavs, we understood, are still hold some mental fact, some mental cognition is there, some intelligence is there when these powerful moods invade the heart. There's still a semblance of intelligence left there when these bhavs, anubhavs, and we mentioned all these anubhavs, they're all mentioned here very clearly in the Bindu. They are nitya, dancing, what are all those bhavs? Nitya, dancing, rolling on the ground, loud crying, writhing of the body. Even in these high states of emotion, there's still some understanding of what I'm doing, a semblance of that. There's some semblance of rationality there in the anubhavs, in contrast to the sattvika bhavs, where there's no semblance of connection with the mind. The mind is governed by logic and rationale and words, etc. But these high, or the highest state of sattvika bhavs is beyond that. This is why when we're hearing these truths, be just appreciative of hearing these truths. It will build a framework for our future meditation on these rasic topics. And it's very exhilarating, it's very wonderful to hear these different emotions of the heart. All, if it's pure, it's focusing on Krishna. But if it's ruruksha, we've described these three different degrees. Snigdha, what is it? Dirgda? Smooth, and Digda, and Ruksha. So the Ruksha, that bhav is not necessarily focused on Krishna. Your hairs can still stand on end, horripilation can still come even though you're not focusing on Krishna. That can happen. And then we didn't discuss much, I just read basically the description of the sattvika bhavs. And today we're coming on to page 590, which is going to describe the vyabhachari bhavs. So we're building an understanding of the vocabulary initially, and of course we can enter within that according to our adhikar, and this will ultimately give us the ingredients which are called the samagri. So the samagri are the ingredients of the four bhavs, the vibhav, anubhav, sattvika bhav, and vyabhachari bhav. And then they are all focusing on the sthai bhav. Then that together creates the samagri. It's like those are the ingredients. So we're working through this, describing carefully. So now on page 590, we've come to, in the middle, Brajanath is asking a question. Prabhu, we have understood vibhav, anubhav, and sattvika bhav. So we've just gone over those very briefly, as well as the difference between sattvika bhavs and anubhavs. So we've just described that also. Now please describe the vyabhachari bhavs. Goswami, there are 33 vyabhachari bhavs. V means distinctly, Abhi means towards, and Chari means moving. These 33 bhavs are called vyabhachari because they move distinctly towards the sthai bhav. It's being described like a lake. The lake is quite flat, but when these winds of the vyabhachari or sanchari bhavs, vyabhachari and sanchari are the same, when they play upon the lake of that sthai bhav, they create all kinds of waves of rasa, of emotional exchanges can take place there. So that's the picture, so to speak. The sthai bhav is like the lake, and the vyabhachari bhavs and the they play on that lake, then they create in their own turn these emotions that manifest on the body as anubhavs and sattvika bhavs. That's just the science of it. Those 33 bhavs are called vyabhachari because they move distinctly towards the sthai-bhav. Sthai-bhav, there are 5 types of sthai-bhav: shanta, dasya, sakya, vatsalya, and madhurya. These are the sthai-bhav, the fixed sthai-bhav. They are also called sanchari. The vyabhachari bhavs are also called sanchari bhavs because they are communicated through words, limbs, and sattva. Sattva means like existence. Through our very nature, they are communicated, and thus travel, sancharita, throughout the system. They are like waves in the nectar ocean of the sthai-bhav, for they rise up, causing it to swell, and then they merge back into the ocean again. So that's kind of a little bit what I've just described before. This lake of the sthai-bhav, then these waves of contrasting emotions arise to create the moods of rasa. And there's an example that we can appreciate when Krishna leaves the Rasa Leela dance with Sri Radhika. Krishna becomes most submissive to Radhika's mood, which is called Swadhina Bhartika. There's 8 heroines, and the highest heroine is when the Nayika has controlled her beloved completely. Tidy my hair, put flowers here, this, etc. She's completely controlled her beloved, and she's feeling very blissful in that control. So together they're walking through a forest, and Radhika is in this mood of Swadhina Bhartika. But all of a sudden, she remembers her girlfriends, and she knows that all the Sakis are going crazy looking for Krishna. She can intuit, she knows that they are becoming most disturbed. So she wants them actually to catch up. But Krishna knows if they catch up and they find us together, then this is not going to be very good, because then they're going to become somewhat disturbed by me taking just you away. Better if I disappear. So Krishna arranges, and he asks Radharani, because they're walking, as I just described, Radharani is in this mood of the controller, and suddenly Krishna turns to her and says, do you want to keep walking, or do you want to come to a flower bed? Do you want to sit down? And all of a sudden, Radharani is not the controller. She says, oh, you can do what you like. You can take me to a flower bed, or we can keep walking. All of a sudden, she's given up her controlling mood. But Krishna, that's called Dakshin Bhav. That's called submissive. Now Krishna, he was already in Dakshin Bhav. So now both the bhavs are the same. So now there's no real waves of rasa. So Krishna leaves. And then Radharani, we know she goes into the highest extremity of separation. And all the gopis, they find her, and then they declare her the very queen of the rasa, because they see the potency of her separation moods. So this is an example of when the two moods become the same, then there's no real waves. But when they're contrasting, this is why Radharani, she's always taking the contrary role in the relationship. And Krishna generally is taking the submissive role, so that these waves can arise. Throughout this, because they are communicated through words, limbs, and sattva, and thus travel sancharita throughout the system. They are like waves in the nectar ocean of the sthai-bhav, for they rise up, causing it to swell, then they merge back into the ocean again. So these vyabhachari bhavs we're going to read now, they rise up, they're transitory. They will come for a period of time, and then they will disappear again. They're not permanent, but they come to enhance the exchanges. That's why they come. So we'll read them through. So 33 vyabhachari bhavs are regret or indifference. So let me get my magnifying glass. Here we go. My specs were supposed to come today, but they didn't arrive. They might come any minute, and that's the money for them on the table. They might just come through the door. So, regret. Now, all these are experienced by the transcendentalist, but they sound very similar to emotions that we're familiar with in the material world. But they're the origin of these emotions in the material world. And they're all focusing ultimately with Rati, that means with Krishna as the Vishaya. So regret or indifference, nirved, despair, vishad, humility, dainya, physical and mental debility, glani, fatigue, shrama, intoxication, mad, pride, garva, suspicion, shanka, fear, trasha, agitation, aveg, madness, unmad, confusion or absence of mind, apashmrita, disease, vyadi, fainting or delusion, moha, death, mrityu, laziness, alasya, inertness, jadya, bashfulness, vrida, concealment of emotions, avahita, remembrance, smriti, deliberation or reasoning, vitarka, anxiety, chinta, resolve or wisdom, mati, fortitude, driti, jubilation, harsha, ardent desire, outshakta, ferocity, ograya, impatience and indignation, amarsha, envy, osarya, osuya, restlessness, chapalyam, sleep, nidra, deep sleep, supti, awakening, bodha. So we'll discuss more of these in a moment. Some sanchari bhavs are independent, swatantra, and some are dependent, paratantra. Para means other, that means, and swa means own. That's the prefix of those words. There are two types of dependent sanchari bhavs, superior, vara, and inferior, avara. The superior category is also divided into two types, namely direct, shakshat, and separated or secondary, vyavahita. The independent sanchari bhavs are divided into three types: those that are devoid of rati, rati shunya, subsequently contacting rati, rati anusparshana, and having a trace of rati, rati ganda. So again, we've got these divisions, rather like the sattviga bhavs. When these bhavs appear in people who are averse to Krishna, or are perceived in inappropriate people or things, they are divided into two types, namely unfavorable, pratikul, and improper, anushchitya. All these bhavs have four conditions: generation, utpatti, union, sandhi, overcoming, shabalya, and pacification, shanti. Brajana. Generation of bhav utpatti, can be easily understood. But what is union, bhav sandhi? So, generation of bhav, that means the growth of bhav, when bhav is manifesting. Bhav utpatti can be easily understood. But what is union, bhav sandhi? Goswami, bhav sandhi occurs when two bhavs, either of the same type or of different types, meet together. For example, when inertness caused by one's loved one, ishta, and inertness caused by something else both arise at the same time, this is an instance of union of two identical emotions, Swarup Bhav Sandhi. I just have to read that again. Bhav Sandhi occurs when two bhavs, either of the same type or of different types, meet together. So either the same or different. For example, when inertness caused by one's loved one, Ista, and inertness caused by something else, both arise at the same time. This is an instance of the union of two identical emotions. So, two identical emotions can manifest simultaneously. One is towards the lover and one is arising in a form of inertness caused by that emotion. Of two identical emotions, Swarup Bhav Sandhi. Conversely, jubilation and apprehension arising simultaneously is an example of union of two different types of bhav, Bina Bhav Sandhi. So, jubilation and apprehension.
Opposites.
Yes, they're not well, they are opposite in a sense, but we can appreciate how they can both arise simultaneously. You can be overjoyed at the same time, some anxiety might be there, or apprehension. Brajanath, what is overcoming? Bhav Shabalya. Goswami, Bhav Shabalya is the clashing and jostling of many bhavs, in which one bhav suppresses another and becomes predominant. For instance, when Kamsa heard about Krishna, he became angry and fearful at the same time. This is an example of Bhav Shabalya. So he was angry, that means like aggressively, fearless, and fearful at the same time. So,
Beautiful.
yes, it is. It is, it's incredible. Brajanath, what is pacification? Bhav Shanti. Goswami, Bhav Shanti occurs when an extremely powerful bhav becomes pacified. When the Brijvasis could not see Krishna nearby, they were very anxious. That anxiousness is chintya, we've just described it here in the page. Where is it? Chintya, anxiety. But their apprehension was at once pacified. That is, it went far away when they heard the sound of his Vamsi. This is the pacified condition of despondency, Rishad. So they had become despondent, but then they heard the sound of Krishna's flute and they were pacified. This is the pacified condition of despondency, Vishad. Brajanath, if we are qualified to know anything more about this subject, then please tell us. Goswami, although there are 41 bhavs that cause transformations of the body and senses, I'll explain. These are the 33 Vyabhachari bhavs, one of the Mukhya Sthai bhavs, because it's one that's applicable to us, and also the 7 Gona Sthai bhavs that I shall describe later. These are all the propensities of the heart, chittavriti, that cause bhav to arise. Brajanath, which types of bhav do they arouse? Goswami, they produce the Ashtasattvika bhavs and the anubhavs that come in the category of vibhavs. So that's focused on the Vishaya. If we are as the Ashraya, then it's focusing on Rati, on the Vishaya. Brajanath, are all the bhavs natural and inborn? Goswami, no. Some of them are natural, while others are transitory. They just come and go. The Bhakta's Sthai bhav is his natural bhav, and the Vyabhachari bhavs are transitory. So that's very simple to appreciate. Do all bhaktas have the same type of bhav? That means these bhavs that we've been describing. Goswami, there are different types of bhaktas according to the difference in the dispositions of their respective minds, manobhav. So there is a gradation of awakening of bhavs, depending on the disposition of the mind. We said many times, the unique speciality of each individual, according to our propensities. This awakening is of three types: garista, heavy; lagista, light; and gambhira, grave. However, the nature of nectar is that it is always liquid, and the heart of the Krishna Bhakta is like nectar by nature. I shall stop here for today. Tomorrow I will explain Sthai Bhav. Vijayam Brajanath offers Sastang Dandavats to Sri Guru Goswami. Taking his position, they left for their place of residence. So now, I want to just elaborate a little bit more by reading some examples from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Bindu. And we've been going, this is in chapter 15, it's on page 187 in the new edition, and it's just elaborating further. So all of the 33 Vyabhachari Bhavs are listed here very clearly. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is giving an overview. He's giving us an idea to form the structure of what is Ras. And then we, in our meditation and sadhana, we will fill in that structure, because it's a very individual, personalized mood that is within that structure. But this is the structure that it's going to be contained in. So he's just given it briefly and simply, but here in the Bindu, it's a little more detailed. So I'm going to read from this old version. It's just, I find it personally fascinating to consider these Vyabhachari Bhavs and what they constitute of. So I'm just going to read a few of these descriptions just for our increased education in this topic of Vyabhachari Bhavs, because I don't really want to go to the next chapter today. I prefer to start a chapter at the beginning of each day. So, but I want to just go over some of these Vyabhachari Bhavs. So the first, this nirved, self-disparagement, means to reproach oneself, considering oneself to be fallen and worthless. But this is not in the material sense. This is in the spiritual sense. Nirved arises from great distress, feelings of separation, jealousy, non-performance of duty, and performance of non-duty. Not doing what you should do and doing what you shouldn't do. In nirved, anxiety, tears, change of color, feelings of worthlessness, heavy sighing, and other anubhavs are manifest. So these are anubhavs that are manifesting. And the anubhavs, if they're focused on rati, these are going to be experienced by the nitya siddha parikas, these eternally perfected souls. They will experience, because we read many times of the moods of separation of the gopis. Actually, in Ananda Vrindavan Champu, there's descriptions where it's described that they feel like they've been bitten by millions of scorpions and cut by razor blades in this mood of separation. This is how they feel for just a moment or two, and then it transcends that. But these feelings are there. Another one, vishad, despondency or depression, arises from non-attainment of one's desired objects. Sri Krishna's inability to complete some endeavor that was begun for Krishna due to the appearance of some calamity that befalls Krishna or due to an offense. The symptoms of Vishad are seeking for a remedy and assistance, anxiety, crying, lamentation, breathing heavily, change of color, and drying of the mouth. All of these are extreme emotions, emotional states, which are fascinating to consider. I'll read from this book now. So, dainya is the third one, wretchedness or humility, To consider oneself despicable and unworthy is called dainya. Dainya arises from distress, fear, and offenses. The symptoms of dainya are speaking words of adulation, awkwardness, incompetence of the heart, gloominess, anxiety, and inertia of the limbs. So these are all extraordinary states of consciousness, you know, that we can, we're being given like an open window to consider and appreciate these different stages. Glani, physical and mental debility. The principle of vital energy and action throughout the body is called oja. The weakness that arises from the waning of this vital energy, brought about by excessive labor, shrama, by mental oppression, or by amorous activities, is called glani. The symptoms of glani are trembling, inactivity, change of color, weakness, and restlessness of the eyes. So, I've never read these publicly before, but I've read them many times just for my own purification. But if we're considering these Vyabhachari bhavs within the moods of the gopis, then simply we are just appreciating these different emotional exchanges or emotional states they are coming to. Like, for example, Chandravali. She knows that Krishna loves Radhika more than her. She knows that. At the same time, she has so much anurag, so much attraction to Krishna, and Krishna appreciates that. So Chandravali really has to suffer in a sense. From the material condition point of view, it appears like that. So she goes through these transcendental stages of extreme jealousy, and so does Radhika towards Chandravali. This is why they both exist. You have the opposition party. Otherwise there can be no stimulation. If everything is just going one way, then there's going to be no extra endeavor. But when there's actually an opposition party, then both parties have to make greater endeavor to capture Krishna's attention, etc. It's all designed to heighten prem. All the dynamics, these dynamics of Vyabhachari bhavs are designed to heighten prem, to heighten the prem. They're very deep. Mada, intoxication. The delight or exuberance that extinguishes knowledge is called mada. This mada arises from drinking honey and from excessive amorous agitation. The symptoms of mad are stumbling, tottering, stammering speech, rolling the eyes, and redness of the eyes. Every single day in Madhyana Lila, all the Sakis and Krishna, they drink this honey mead and they all become intoxicated. They talk about why is the earth rolling so much now? And they all go into a state of intoxication. And it's very sweet to appreciate that. So this is this description here. Garva, pride, the disregard for others that occurs due to one's own good fortune. Beauty, youth, qualities. It's described particularly when during the Ras Leela at the beginning, that the gopis were feeling so much pride in their fortune of having danced with Krishna. This mood was there prominently in their hearts. So, but Krishna wanted to purify that. But still it was a pride in Krishna. So it's completely transcendental. But at the same time, it was obstructing the full-blown bliss of the Ras Leela, which is later purified by that pastime I've just recently described. about Radharani and their meeting like that. So disregard for others, yes, because this mood of thinking themselves the most fortunate women in the universe. Refuge, Sri Krishna, or attainment of one's desired object is called garva. The symptoms of garva are disdainful speech, not answering another simply to amuse oneself, displaying one's limbs, concealing one's intention, and not listening to another's words. So we can read ourselves all of these different descriptions of the Vyabhachari bhavs. They're quite remarkable and fascinating. There's where's this Avahita? I'm going to read that one. Avahita, concealment of emotions. This is how the gopis, when they first meet Krishna in the Pranaya Gita, they are concealing their attraction and affection for Krishna, and Krishna is concealing his attraction for them. But Krishna wants to see their attraction, so he tells them all to go home. Then he knows he's going to make them angry or impatient with him, and how will they respond then? So he wants to bring that out. He wants to break that shyness within them. So this avahita, concealment of emotions, to display emotions artificially in order to conceal one's true confidential feelings or emotions, is called avahita. The symptoms of avahita are hiding the limbs that betray those emotions, looking elsewhere, futile action, and impaired speech. So these are all the deeper intricacies of these Vyabhachari bhavs. So 33 mentioned very beautifully here. And then we go on to the next chapter in this Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu Bindu, and it's describing what we just touched on at the very end of this chapter 27. These three, how did Bhaktivinoda Thakur speak it? The awakening of the three types of Garista, Lagista, and Gambhira. This heavy, light, and grave. So this is described on page 199 in detail on this. Yes. Huh? Page, oh, it's in chapter, text 16. Text 16 if you have a Kindle or something. Yes. So we have the divisions of Kakash, hard, and Garista, heavy. The heart which is heavy is compared to gold. Very beautiful descriptions. And then Gambhira, deep. The heart which is deep, is compared to an ocean. That's Gambhira. And then Mahishta, big. The heart which is big is compared to a city. And there's further descriptions here about it. Very beautiful. And then there are Komala, soft. Lagista, light. The heart which is light is compared to cotton. When the winds of emotion come, if the heart is light, it will completely respond to those emotions externally. But if the heart is heavy like gold, it will be much more grave and will hold those emotions down somewhat. And then Utana, shallow. The heart which is shallow is compared to a pond. And Shodishta, tiny. The heart which is tiny is compared to a cottage. So all of these also are explained very beautifully in this Bindu. For example, Garista and Lagista, this heavy and light is described. Emotion that arises in the heart of these two types is compared to the wind. A strong wind has no influence on a lump of gold, but even a slight breeze will send a cotton ball flying. That's what I just described it. Gambhira, deep like the ocean. Emotion that arises in the heart of those two types is compared to a mountain peak. Even if a huge boulder or a mountain peak falls into the ocean, no disturbance is seen in the ocean. But if a pebble is thrown into a small pond, all the water is agitated. See these contradictions, very amazing. Now Mahishta and Lagishta, large and small. These two types of emotion that arise in the heart are compared to a lamp and an elephant. In a great city, lamps and elephants are not noticed, but before a cottage they are clearly seen. Beautiful examples. So this is all in connection with the emotions rising, etc., and their hardness or softness. That's what is described in text 16. So these are the what Bhaktivinoda Thakur was just concluding this chapter, but he didn't go into any details because I think he's understanding that if someone's going to do a study of this, they have to have this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu alongside to go more deeply into it. But if you just read it as it is, you're going to get so much, you're going to get the structure very clearly, but you're not really going to appreciate the terminologies sufficiently. But by reading the Bindu, then these terminologies will become much more clear. So I think I'll stop today, a few minutes early.
Question.
Oh, you have a question? Yeah.
So Maharaj, there are 40 chapters here,
Yeah.
and there are quite a few less in the Bindu. How do these chapters correlate in terms of their numbers to the...
When you read them,
Yeah.
you'll discover.
Okay.
It's like, for example, in the last description is the description of Vyabhachari Bhavs.
Yes.
This is one text.
Yes.
But in here, the Vyabhachari Bhavs, the Sattvika Bhavs, and the Anubhavs are all in one chapter.
Yes.
So this is more condensed, and this is more opened out. But it's still following in complete sequence, because previously we've just read in text 14 about Vibhav is there,
Yes.
and Sattvika Bhavs is there, which we just read.
Sequence is exactly
And the
same.
yes, it's exactly paralleling. But sometimes the Bindu will open it a little more, and sometimes the just like now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur wasn't talking about this Garista, Lagista, and Gambhira. He wasn't mentioning that particularly strong, but here it's opening right out. So that's how it's corresponding. If you just keep reading this, like after the Vyabhachari Bhavs, after this description, is going to come the 5 types of Sthai Bhav, which is going to be spoken in the next chapter, this Rasa Vichar and Mukhya Rati, because Mukhya Rati means the principal Rati, principal Bhav. The principal Bhav is the Sthai Bhav, is the emperor. It's described as the emperor of all the Bhavs, is the Sthai Bhav. So that'll be described in the next chapter. So it's paralleling pretty much all the way through.
Right, thank you.
But it's really, really helpful. Okay, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Rasa Tattva ki jai, Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Gold Premanandi. All my intention is to do is actually to read what is here and to give us the appreciation of the structure of Rasa Tattva. And it's up to us, ourselves, to go into the internal meditation on all these different topics. I'm not going to go so much into that at this point, but with smaller groups we can do like that. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.